Hello, and welcome to another episode of Echopunks, recorded live in front of an automated audience. This is our podcast version rather than our salon version, where we tend to have fewer guests in the podcast version, but still the same idea, an improvised conversation that tries to dig deep into the subjects and society we find ourselves in. But the benefit of the podcast is we can be a little more responsive in terms of current events. So, with that in mind, Jan, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, we talked today about Sam Altman and the ongoing drama with OpenAI. Um, did he step down? Was he fired? Is he coming back? Is he being called back? Nobody knows. This could have changed since we started talking here. And I'm actually grateful that you reached out today, Jesse, and suggested that we talk here because I find this is quite a massive story. I was considering to write about it. I might as well write about it because I think that the consequences of this go way beyond Silicon Valley or the tech industry, and might actually, shatter society to a certain extent.
I agree. I think like a lot of the AI stories that kind of hit the popular zeitgeist these days, they're never just about technology. They're never just about business. They always include ethics. They always include governance, trust, public perception, propaganda, disinformation, right? And it speaks to how they really provide us with a lens to dig deeper and to understand things. And what's particularly interesting about this story with Sam Altman and OpenAI is both the level of speculation, but it's a company called OpenAI. And it's a company that, is one of the fastest growing in the history of companies. Like their app, ChatGPT, has had the largest sign up of any app in history. Like previous to them, it was TikTok, right? And now they happen to have the largest growth. So this is could be about greed. This could be about power. This could be about concerns of AI taking over the world because that is certainly Sam Altman's narrative. So I think, to your point, it is one of these Pandora's boxes that once it's opened up, there's all sorts of things that come out of it above and beyond the characters or company itself. So it is one of those stories I think that merits us on a Sunday getting together and having a chat, but is also not going to end anytime soon.
What I find remarkable is not that we have such a discussion or that such an incident happens in the industry, right? That happens every other day and has been happening for decades. What is shocking is where it is happening and who it is happening to, right? In the entire AI conversation, trust, security, and safety, coupled to trust, have been such dominant topics. And OpenAI, and particularly Sam Altman, seemed to be the almost too good to be true players here. Raising the fingers, asking and calling everyone for caution. And at this point, I have to say, Jesse, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what the factual outcome of this drama is going to be. The fact that this has been lingering now for more than 24 hours with as much dirt standing in the room, such as he has not always been candid, right? Whatever that means. This is something that has everyone actually return from this charade as losers, whether guilty or not. It is just mind blowing how this can be.
Well,
And
and let me
yeah.
just quickly interject there. I mean, that on the one hand speaks to the value of the franchise. That when you have a company that is worth as much money as OpenAI is right now, and the paradox being that this is a for-profit company governed by a not-for-profit board, and it's the not-for-profit board that fired the CEO of the for-profit company. So to your point, fundamentally it can and in theory will damage the value, the money associated with it. But I think I want to tease out the other sort of implication that you're describing, which is I think this is a pivotal point for society, for AI, right? It's one of those moments where everyone, just like SBF and FTX was a pivotal moment in crypto and how people perceive crypto. I think this is going to be a pivotal moment in the debate around what is AI, how should it be governed, controlled, should it be for profit, should it not be for profit, should it be, left to an entrepreneur, a CEO who kind of is of this Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk kind of mold, or should it be, much more of a corporation where you don't have so much leading personalities but responsible people in control. I think that's what's fascinating is we have, we've been going on this already for a few minutes and we still haven't, exhausted the list of big topics that
No,
are really exploded by this story.
yes to everything you said, and right, because I think yes, this is shattering for AI. Yes, this at a higher level is shattering probably for all of Silicon Valley, but it is shattering even beyond that, right? We spoke about trust not so long ago, and a bunch of communications agencies run trust barometers have found out that society these days is expecting societal change to come from brands in society and not from politicians anymore. Nowhere else than in Silicon Valley are brands as synonymous with their leaders and CEO as over there. And look at what just happened, right?
But
SBF
here's
had some,
okay.
yeah, and
Let me push back right
this
there
is
though.
just, yeah. Go ahead.
Because you raise a very interesting paradox. On the one hand, you're right. People now trust brands. They trust companies. They trust especially companies that they interact with a lot, way more than politicians, way more than traditional leaders. But I almost think that the exception to the rule when it comes to social responsibility has been Silicon Valley, right? Like at best, Silicon Valley presents itself as falsely neutral, but usually Silicon Valley is move fast and break things, right? Like with Uber and the taxi industry, or Airbnb and the hotel industry, or Facebook and Google with the media industry. And so, what interesting about OpenAI is they were a move fast and break things company, right? They were like ChatGPT, literally, it's not even a year since it was unleashed, and it has completely caused almost every other industry to rethink how they operate in the face of this new tool. And at the same time, the amount of competition happening in the AI space, because before ChatGPT, Google was not going to release a chatbot. Now they have, right? Facebook was not going to release a chatbot. Now they have, right? So it's on multiple different levels. I think to your point, the speed and the impact of ChatGPT has that same level of social change, of people wanting to see brands make a difference. But I am not at all surprised where you're a kind of like wagging your finger at them. I'm not at all surprised by their incompetence when it comes to governance, because their track record for social responsibility is pretty poor.
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about their competence, but right, the title of our little conversation here is "No More Heroes," right? And I think for way too long, society has sought heroes, maybe in the wrong places, has idolized Silicon Valley trizillionaires, and has, let basically them get away with anything. And now even those who were only 2 days earlier praised as the second coming of Steve Jobs, those who are saintlier than the saints, now accuse each other publicly of not being candid at all times for 36 hours. That's just,
But
you know,
let's
not
get
looking
into
good.
that.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that a bit,
Hmm.
because there is a lot of speculation online. Like we're, what's interesting about this podcast is we're not breaking news for people. While some of our listeners,
Mm.
they might be going, "Who's Sam Altman? Who's OpenAI?" I doubt it. And similarly, this has been such huge global news that even people who know nothing about Sam Altman and OpenAI know that he got fired. Like that's how big this has been. And I think what I've enjoyed so far about our conversation is we're getting into the bigger picture and the larger implications. And I think this accusation, this charge of not being candid, right? Or translating it of lying, I think that is interesting because where I think that is entirely plausible is the argument that OpenAI was a part-time gig for Sam Altman, right? That he is someone who is such a hotshot, such a player in Silicon Valley in the AI industry that he does have legitimately other companies and other initiatives that he is currently pursuing. Now, OpenAI benefits from having him as the CEO because he is such a hero, right? Or such a high profile pioneer or leader in the industry. But he is engaged in other initiatives that the board, for good reason, might feel could be a conflict of interest. And it's not so much that he's lying, but he's not disclosing the entirety of his business activities, which a CEO in theory should. But because he does have other hustles, other side hustles, that might be one of the issues that the board has.
So you just expressed in two sentences, right, what they hinted at in one sentence, not candid at all times. So, you didn't even take up more oxygen in articulating this and made much more sense.
But this is
Right. So,
obviously why they should have had us on retainer. And
yeah, of course, of course. No, and I agree with you. My point is it really so bad that you have to be so vague by calling it not candid, right? Because that makes me think, oh my God, if they can't say more than this, how bad must it be that the Messiah, who again, was just celebrated 2 days earlier, is ousted so ominously? And I'm not taking sides here, right?
no, but
You
allow
know,
me to double down
yeah.
on our own promotional
Mm,
aspects here. This is the problem with lawyers. And this is the problem with lawyers being the people who run crisis communications
mm.
rather than people who operate in the court of public opinion. Because in this case, the court of public opinion matters way more than the court of law. Because if you got a $90 billion company, you can afford whatever lawsuits come at you. But you may not be a $90 billion company if the court of public opinion starts to turn on you.
Maybe
And
the
that's
legal
where I
department
think, go ahead.
Maybe the legal department didn't scale fast enough. That's a bad joke. Sorry, I should not have interrupted you for this. Thank you
No,
very much. I appreciate this.
I thought, the larger context here is understanding who the audience is.
Mm,
And, the one criticism I think that we can all agree on when it comes to the board is they really weren't thinking about the larger audience. Now, they might have been thinking about larger issues like ethics. They might have been thinking about larger issues like the relationship between AI and society. But I think our general point was if they were thinking about the audience, they wouldn't have put out something that was so vague and yet mysterious and yet in any ways does not solve this. Because here's the other twist that we woke up to this morning that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Apparently, Sam Altman may be coming back.
yeah, I'm speechless. I read that too. Um, Again, I can only say I'm baffled. On the OpenAI side. I'm also baffled on his maneuvering, because if he now comes back, what does that even mean? And does that also imply that the COO, he who seems to have left out of solidarity to him, comes back too, right? And the trouble here is, to bring it back to your original question, what does that mean for AI? The biggest currency that Sam Altman and OpenAI had was trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because you also used another great term, complexity, right? The industry is so complex, no one understands it. And they basically relied on messaging. They only ever said, hey, we can't prove it, but trust us. We are the careful guys.
Mm-hmm.
And now what, he's considering to come back. What the hell has happened here? And I have to say, at some point, it stops mattering what the hell happened there. The
Oh,
fact
agreed.
that the fact that this can just think of it. You just mentioned numbers. The fact that this is even possible to linger on for so long is just unbelievable.
Well, and the variable here, especially when it comes to disciplined communications, is
Hmm.
Microsoft, right? Because Microsoft is beyond any other player in this ecosystem, has huge influence and control over OpenAI, partly because they're the cloud computing partner. OpenAI would not exist without Microsoft, and their partnership agreement, which is almost an ownership agreement, although it's complicated, means that Microsoft was completely caught blindsided by this. And if Sam Altman's coming back, I can almost guarantee it's because Microsoft is insisting on it, and to your point, is already concerned about the trust, the instability, and in such a highly competitive industry. Because the flip side to this is like, what if? Because it's not just Sam Altman that left the company, right? It was the
Exactly. Yeah.
president, and it was a lot of the talented folks who worked there.
Hmm.
And so you could all of a sudden turn around and Amazon could be like, hey, Sam, come use our cloud. We got lots of data for you. And all of
Right.
a sudden, OpenAI is kind of left in the dust. Microsoft is left holding the bag, right? All because the board could not find conflict resolution or a better means of communicating so that people could be candid, right? And again, it makes you wonder, from my perspective, about competence. But I think to your argument about thinking about the consequences of these types of events.
No, no, and you make a brilliant point bringing up Microsoft, because when I heard about this, I heard that they had been given the heads up a minute prior to the announcement happening. And if you think of Microsoft, right, one thing that they stand for is not necessarily sexy, but consistency, right? A consistent, stable profile, no highs, hardly any lows, and also a very, very low gray profile in the public eye, right? You think Tim Cook of Apple is kind of humble, right? I mean, come on, Microsoft, they are the guys. How embarrassed and humiliated must they feel about this having happened to them?
And undermined, right?
Yeah, right.
To the larger point of trust makes them wonder about their relationship with OpenAI and whether that relationship can be trusted. Because so much of corporate relations is individualized into the CEO, as you sort of
Hmm.
pointed out. And if the board doesn't have confidence in the CEO, which appears to be in this instance, then that does shake the entire institution as a whole. Now, this is where I will interrupt and take a moment to run an ad. And at some point, I would like to have a kind of music that goes in the background of an ad, but we're not there yet for copyright reasons.
And I'm not
So,
singing. I'm not singing either.
and you're
So
not singing,
yeah.
but you know, imagine that we are at an event and we're taking a time out, and instead here, I as the ad man will come in and read an ironically appropriate ad for a service called Cat GPT. Are you missing a furry friend in your life but can't be bothered to feed a living creature and clean up its shit? Introducing Cat GPT, an AI cat companion filling the void in your soul and lack of a social life without the hassle. CatGPT is an advanced machine learning model trained on decades of cat memes, videos, and archetypes to give you a realistic but entirely fake simulation of what the internet thinks it is like to own a cat. It includes smart home integrations with extensible features such as knocking the shit off of tables, pissing on your favorite furniture, incessant complaining for food, and rambunctious shenanigans at 3 a.m. You can have the lived experience of owning a cat too without the responsibility and emotional connection. Visit catgpt.ai today to learn more.
This is incredible. I need one of those, Jesse. Where are we getting those from? Who's importing those?
I think they're just available from the internet itself. So
Wow.
the .ai domain is, technically not associated with any geographic domain. So this could be entirely imagined vaporware that you can get anywhere as long as you go to their website.
This is incredible. The
And
internet
this is
is
where I
unbelievable.
note to
Yeah.
myself, we should probably check to see if these websites exist before
Yeah.
we put
Okay.
them out there.
Sure.
But yes.
All right. Okay. Where were we at? We were still
To
talking
no more
about.
heroes, right? Like, and I think
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
bring
Yeah.
it
Right.
back to that, what I find interesting about Sam Altman is just like Sam Bankman-Fried, he was originally, perhaps up to this point, cast as a hero, right? Like
Yeah.
it's almost like it's when it's too good to be true, it is not true. And maybe the issue here, if we are to trust the board, and I am kind of inclined to do so, is that maybe Sam Altman is not the hero that he was spelled out to be. What do you think?
So, I always thought that he was a little too holy, too saintly for my personal taste, right? I mean, if someone's always saying the right thing in the right places, that's like he was kind of the Derek Jeter of AI, right? Every interview, he did whatever was right for the team to win. Yes, thank you. Um, so yeah, I'm wondering. I'm wondering. The last thing that I read about this was 2 hours ago in the New York Times, and it was speculating that it had to do with security concerns. That one of the board members who basically led the charge in ousting him was seeing security risks in the rapid expansion of AI that Sam Altman apparently did not see. So,
So
if that is,
let's
yeah,
stop for a moment
yeah,
and get into that
yeah,
specifically because
yeah,
I think it's substantive. And
yeah.
and the issue here was the OpenAI Dev Day that happened a week
Hmm.
ago, that
Hmm.
we wrote about in our Gazette. And the issue was the APIs, the application programming interfaces, which, if you think of the internet as a series of holes, a series of huge holes that on the one hand allow for cooperation, but on the other hand allow for hacking, allow for data
Mm.
breaches, privacy breaches. In theory, OpenAI and the way in which they allowed for full customization on top of their platform, there are a lot of people in the last week in the cybersecurity industry who said this is the biggest moment ever for hacking, and that it is going to allow a kind of hacking that was never possible, never conceived previously.
Hmm.
And there's an ounce of truth to that. I think that it is hyperbole. I think it is what the cybersecurity industry does, which is foster fear and paranoia. But at the same time, there's truth to be said that the speed by which OpenAI made these announcements and made these tools available did not allow those who play defense to properly wrap their heads around how the game has changed. Whereas those who play offense, they sure are incentivized to adopt new tools if it's going to help them steal more identities and data and hack into systems. So I think there's some truth to that, but this is all separate from larger political issues, which I
Yeah.
think the board was also focused on. Go ahead.
Yeah, but even if he jumped the gun there, do you then fire people within 2 days? I don't know. I said earlier, it almost doesn't matter how it ends, because if you look back, I tried to keep count on the personnel failures or disgraceful descents from Silicon Valley. I stopped being able to keep count. WeWork, Uber, FTX, then Juicero, right? The list goes on and on and on. And all these brands or companies are associated with, their founder, with the face of the franchise, so to say. So,
Look,
yeah, and,
Uber would have
and
collapsed had they not ousted their founder in
yeah,
what was a Night of the Long Knives drama fueled episode. But I think you're drawing together two things which are both accurate but distinct.
yeah,
One is the fallacy of the founder, right?
yeah,
That past a certain point, a human can it can only do so much, right? We still
yeah,
need sleep. We still need downtime. We can only communicate so many hours in a day. And I think part of this is the founder tries to be this ubermensch that is just not possible and is a myth and inevitably leads to some sort of catastrophic failure. But the other side to this is the culture of Silicon Valley. And the key part of Silicon Valley is the con, as in confidence scam. And a lot of these companies are cons. And here's where I am a little suspicious of OpenAI, as I always am, and where I feel we're at an interesting kind of point where I can throw my speculation into the larger political or personal dynamics in the OpenAI board. And that's Sam Altman's belief in general artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence.
hmm
And this is the, Skynet, the 2001, the term, like this is the idea of an AI that is fundamentally smarter than us and doesn't need us. And I'm a skeptic. I think that's horseshit. I think it's not going to happen in our lifetime. It may never happen. I think it is the arrogance of humans to think that we can recreate an intelligence, you know.
hmm
And he's an evangelist, and he sees OpenAI's mission not in making money off the large language models they have now, but he sees OpenAI's mission as the pursuit of artificial general intelligence. And I could see people on the board saying, "We're making a mint here, buddy. Forget about your pipe dreams. Let's stick with what we got, son. It's a moneymaker machine." And there might have been a conflict there and a reason to part ways. Again, we don't know, but there are so many core foundational issues that are touched upon in this particular story that I wouldn't rule anything out.
But I do not remember a case where a hero, right, who was on top of the highest mountain, a mountain that was so high that we didn't even know it existed before, that he was ousted so brutally. So, let's assume all those conflicts that you laid out existed, right? Then, people
Although,
can,
come on, like
yeah,
I gotta pause myself because
yeah,
what you just described, not to repeat ourselves,
yeah,
is Sam Bankman Fried, though, right?
yeah, right. Right, right. But then, if
Because
all
he
that
was
is,
on a big mountain and he's now in jail for the rest of his life.
look, if he stole money, right? If he murdered people, then call the police and get him jailed, right? But don't fire him and say he hasn't always been candid with the board. What a bullshit, right?
But
And
maybe it's not. Like,
honestly,
I kind of agree with you. I do kind of agree that it's probably
and
horseshit.
and and also and also and
But what if
also,
it's not? What if it
no,
isn't?
look, but even having other interests or pursuing other interests, right? The founder and CEO of Facebook, now Meta, sunk billions in the metaverse,
Yeah.
and finally realized, okay, that was not a good idea. I should stop doing this.
But okay, this brings us back to governance. Nobody can fire Zuckerberg.
Because
He's
he owns
made
the
sure
place.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Altman is not in a similar situation. Right? And I think a larger question, because I fear that he is going to be brought back. I fear that the way in which this has been totally mishandled, that they've all been backed into a corner, and they're going to do some type of internal mediation or conflict resolution, and they're going to tell the world it was a fuck up. We're back. He's back. We're going to keep going forward. That's what Microsoft will be saying while putting guns to their heads. Um, but I think a broader discussion here is of governance, right? And I would prefer that Altman not come back, And
Hmm.
I would love to see OpenAI continue to succeed without a hero.
Hmm.
That's the point. No more heroes. We don't need
Hmm.
heroes. We don't need these mythical men as these founders that Silicon Valley requires as figureheads. What if instead we had competent managers and people working as a team to succeed? A naive idea,
Hmm.
perhaps, but one that I think, is quite viable in this era of automation.
No, and I think it's also a viable management model, right? We were speaking about Microsoft earlier, right? And I know approximately what the name of the Microsoft CEO sounds like, but I'm not able to speak it out and pronounce it properly. And that's not because it's Indian, right? That's not the reason. The reason is that Microsoft's management team, basically seems to have checked egos somewhere, at reception, and seems to put the company first. That would be an argument for your case to say, hey, look, this is viable. A point against your case is, right, and you cannot deny this, as a company that is up and coming and that needs to break through, ceilings, doors, needs to convince lobbyists and governments even, don't you need a strong face of the company who can kind of win over millions, so to say, you
Yeah,
know?
and unfortunately, I think that latter view will continue to be the norm. But I think it's a mistake, and I say this because people get hit by buses every day. Like shit happens, and I think what's interesting about Microsoft is not just that they're a publicly owned company, so they're accountable to more than just a single jerk, but they also have focused on talent development.
Yeah.
And, Satya Nadella came up through Microsoft the same way that a lot of their senior management are lifetime Microsoft people because they have a really smart and deep talent development strategy and roster. And I think that that is one of the shallowest parts of Silicon Valley is the way in which they treat talent, that they treat talent like a high priced commodity, but like a commodity nonetheless. And, unfortunately, Twitter embodies this
Mhm.
complete talent mismanagement, but they're not unique to Silicon Valley in general.
You know what I find amazing here, and I had no idea that I could ever get as excited about Microsoft as I am getting right now. What I find also amazing here is the company value and how it developed over the last 5 or even 10 years, which, from a public relations perspective, have been rather quiet, right? You don't hear, or read much spectacular stuff about Microsoft. There is a thing here or there, but it's kind of more like, it's unspectacular.
I mean, there's two things to that.
Yeah,
One, you sure hear a lot about Xbox, right? You sure hear a lot about Minecraft,
yeah.
right? And we forget that those are Microsoft owned properties. So I think to your point, there is or LinkedIn, right, which is another Microsoft property. But again, I think part of what you're suggesting, and I agree with, is the intelligence or strategy in which they do branding. But here's another interesting twist that underlines what you're saying, and that is the power of AI as a brand. Because I would
Hmm.
argue that AI is meaningless, right?
Yeah.
That if you think about branding as a narrative battle as to who gets to be associated with the true value, cloud computing is the real loser when it comes to branding of AI. Because everything that is AI is cloud computing. All the money currently being spent on AI or by AI companies is cloud computing, which does include chips, right? Because NVIDIA AI chips are one of the hottest things in the planet right now. But fundamentally, AI is an interesting branding exercise that could have just been cloud computing. Everything we describe as AI, we could just describe as cloud computing. And the fact that we don't that is Amazon's loss. That is Microsoft's loss. That's even Google's loss, right? And it's interesting how that particular narrative battle has played out. And with that said, allow me to take a moment to read another advertisement because I am a little bit conscious of time. And this is an interesting ad, Jan, that was placed with us from a really innovative, heartfelt organization called the Society for Dogs Without Cheese. Did you know that 99% of dogs are not fed cheese on a regular basis?
That's unimaginable. I cannot believe that number. That is
It's
outrageous.
true. At the Society for Dogs Without Cheese, their mission is to ensure that all dogs receive an adequate amount of cheese on a daily basis.
That is
With
absolutely, forgive me for saying this, this is absolutely, wait for it, nuts.
it is.
Yeah,
And with your sponsorship, a dog without cheese
yeah.
can receive daily cheese offerings for
Wow.
just for just $5 a month. You can make a difference. Sign up today at dogswithoutcheese.org to start supporting a dog without cheese.
It's not make a difference. It's not make a difference. It's save lives, basically.
I agree.
Save
I
lives.
agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
I agree.
Wow,
It is.
such a good cause, and we ran this ad free of charge, right? Because it is such a good cause. We didn't
No,
charge
we
them.
did take their money, only
Oh, that's good.
because my dog needs cheese, and
And
that
I
cheese
need and
costs
I need
money.
money. I need
Yeah,
money. I need
yeah,
money.
yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. I
Any
wanted to
last
briefly,
thoughts here? Go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to briefly build on your Amazon reference here because that is interesting, right? Amazon have pretty much stayed out of all of this AI hocus pocus nonsense. And
Well,
I'm
yes and
wondering,
no. Like yes and no. And it's interesting that you think they have. I think that is very telling, but go on.
so out of the public eye, out of the debate, right? And I'm wondering, are they maybe, just wringing their hands and laughing their asses off about this branding exercise, which might be for nothing?
I I wish they could. If they were not the insecure conformist corporate types that they probably are, I
Mhm.
agree they should be laughing their heads off. But they got their own problems. And at the top of that list is Alexa. Like you forget that Amazon Alexa and Amazon's AI assistant was a huge initiative the company pushed for years and basically got nowhere, right? Like
Mm.
internally, they basically consider Alexa to be a failure, even though it still continues to be a feature of their products.
Right.
Similarly, as part of their cloud computing services, they've got lots of AI that is making an impact, and they certainly use AI as part of their logistics operations and their warehouse operations and their e-commerce operations. And Amazon's biggest growing business by far, like it's so crazy. I think we'll have to talk about it in a future salon or podcast. Is their advertising business.
Yeah,
And of
right,
course,
right.
their advertising
It's
businesses is
disgusting.
also
It's disgusting.
entirely driven by AI. Come on, you work in the advertising industry. Let's not call it
Yeah.
disgusting yet.
Well,
Let's hold
yeah.
that off for a future
Mm.
episode when
Okay.
we
Good,
can
good,
dig into it. And
good. Yeah.
because, not all ads are bad. The two ads we ran as part of this podcast were
They
fantastic,
were incredible.
right?
I would
So,
actually,
yes.
if I was part of the Pulitzer Prize committee, I would suggest these people, whoever wrote this ad. I have one
Yes.
question for you, Jesse. I have one question
Go
for
ahead.
you. So the title is No More Heroes.
Yes.
I personally agree that Silicon Valley or the business industry is maybe not the right place to search and look for heroes. But where can we find heroes? Do you have a place where you look for heroes?
No, so this is part of why I think we came to this title so quickly. I'm a big fan of the Stranglers song No More Heroes. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we can't play it due to the tyranny of
Mm.
copyright law that exists on the internet. Um, but I, for many years, have not had any heroes. And partly it's because all of the heroes I had when I was younger have also, what's the word, disappointed me at some shape or time. The most recent, which I don't mind disclosing, because I still love the guy, I still think he's an incredible human being, is Chuck D of Public Enemy.
Oh, what
And
did he do? What did he do?
at the start of the pandemic, he was adamant that 5G was causing the COVID virus.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember. Oof.
Right? And
Yeah.
again, like, I don't fault him for
Mm.
coming to such a conclusion given the state of
Yeah.
disinformation that exists. But it was a reminder that having a hero is probably not a good thing. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and maybe to your point, and this is where I'll point out that our Living with Animals episode really gets into this. I don't have heroes. I have animals. I have dogs. I have horses. I have goats, and they are the furthest thing from heroes. They're anti-heroes without a doubt. But in loving them and looking up to them, I am rarely disappointed. Versus, like, and to finish my long answer and to throw it then back at you, you know, like, lately I really try to dig deep in podcasts to find super smart people, to find, you know, the geniuses of the world, the you know, the trailblazers, the punks, right, the people
Right.
who
Right.
are
Right.
really out there. So the short
Yeah.
answer to your question is podcasting.
Mm.
Right, I
Mm.
think the people worth investigating, worth learning about, worth mining for good ideas can be found generally somewhere in the podcast ecosystem. Unfortunately, usually as a guest on a crappy podcast, but not ours.
Mm.
But fundamentally, I think that we shouldn't have heroes,
Yeah.
and I think that instead of heroes, we should be looking for friends, and for fellow punks, peers,
Or
rather than people to
behaviors.
put on a pedestal.
Behaviors, right? Behaviors are good to observe and to
But
mimic,
even
maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
but even then, I think that the danger is to the extreme. Like, for example, you and I are big fans of eating lots of plants and eating a diversity of plants and as many plants as possible. But I think vegans are extremists who should be thoroughly ignored. And it's an example where they've taken a behavior to such an extreme that it becomes, I feel, bigotry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think, you know, I agree, behavior is something to learn from. Again, my thing is friends, not heroes. Right. Let's understand the
Yeah,
fallibility of humans and
right.
the fact that we all fuck up and we can learn
Yeah.
from each other rather than needing heroes who we think are infallible.
And I almost want to uncouple it from people, full stop, because people are not to be idolized, right? I thought that your answer to my question, not although, but maybe because it was long, was really, really good. And as you spoke, I was actually thinking of David Bowie's song Heroes, which I could see as a nice theme song here for that episode, because I like the verse that goes, "We could be heroes just for one day," right? Because we really, really can. Maybe we
Well,
cannot. Maybe we cannot be for 2 days because we are too.
no,
What's
no,
the word?
no.
Valuable? Yeah.
But let me bring that
Mhm.
back because I think we have to be heroes every day. But I don't
Try
think
to
the
be.
issue. Yeah, but
Try to be.
I don't think we should be heroes. I think we should be punks. Because I think that's what, you know, you and I have found as a commonality and an inspiration in the
Mm.
punk identity, that you can be a punk every day. A punk is far from perfect, but a punk is a kind of hero.
I
And in
agree with you.
particular, in
Yeah.
the world that we live in, you know, a punk is the kind of hero that is both fallible but also inspiring, right? And something that gets other people to go, fuck yeah, I got to do something about it. And this is where, you know, I'll start to wrap and say, at a future episode, I want us to talk about literary echo punks, because as part of my research, you know, I put echo punks into my podcast player, partly to see that we were finally there and people can now subscribe to our podcast on their favorite podcast player of choice.
And subscribing is great, right? Isn't that the greatest?
It is, but more importantly is giving us a 5-star review. Look,
That's
even
right.
a 1-star review, quite frankly, would be
Yeah.
welcome. But in searching for echo punks, I realized that our use of the term is novel, that we are creating a new branch in its etymology, because most people see echo punks as dystopian, Whereas you and I are kind of the opposite of dystopia.
Right.
And I would say that our Echo Punk network is filled with people who are the opposite of dystopia.
Very much grounded in the here and now.
Yes, so we're definitely gonna have to dig into that in the future.
Yeah.
Any final words there, Jan?
I want to thank you for playing my favorite song here at the end of this first episode. This is such a catchy tune. I love it.
Well, I'll probably be playing at the end of all of our episodes.
Oh,
So,
great.
Thanks again.
Sign me up.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.